if we can kick off now and try and keep everybody here for as short a time as possible. Good evening, everyone. You're all very welcome here to the Dublin Dental Hospital, and I'd like to express our appreciation for you coming this evening on behalf of the Irish Nutritional and Dietetics Institute and ourselves in the Irish Cancer Society. My name is Robert O'Connor. I'm Head of Research for the Irish Cancer Society, for those of you that don't know me. I'd like to firstly thank the team of people who've helped us organise this evening, my own team here, from our communications, Robert, Michael, Hazel, especially Rachel, who put a lot of work into this, Bella, and our newest member, Zita. So this is part of our ongoing Irish Cancer Society Research Decoding Cancer series. This is a series of talks that we do roughly every 2 months, which we're trying to communicate facts around cancer and trying to bring the latest research to those of us that are interested in it, getting world-class speakers to talk on important topics in cancer. The Irish Cancer Society spends between €3 and €3.5 million specifically on research. A third of our overall expenditure just on research to try and improve outcome in cancer, so we feel it's a very important aspect that people get to appreciate that impact of research. We've 120 funded researchers through that funding, and all of that is made possible by the donations that we receive from the public. 98% of our income is from donations. It's a patient-focused factual information session. If you're interested, you can keep following us. We're broadcasting currently on Facebook Live, and you'll be able to look back on that. But we also keep up to date through Twitter, LinkedIn, and if you're interested in following our research events at irishcancer.ie is the email address. Myself, I'm a cancer researcher by background, and increasingly as I've gotten into this role in the Cancer Society, I've realised I've had to spend more time debunking the many myths around cancer. These impact the daily lives of many cancer patients and their families. And we do this to try and empower patients, to give them information with which to make decisions about their own life and their own health from a fact-based perspective. And I think nowhere are patients and those concerned about cancer more ill-informed than in the area of diet and cancer. I can speak to that. I've got a little bit of skin in this game, I think, myself. All of us here are impacted by cancer. And I saw the impact of misinformation in cancer myself recently. My father was diagnosed recently with bladder cancer, and I was with him when he was talking to the consultants. And at the end, my mother asked a very normal question, which I think many of you will resonate with many of you. She said, what can we do? So he was getting all of this great, fantastic treatment, and we have really fantastic treatment and fantastic clinicians here in Ireland. And she said, after that, she said, should he go on a diet? Should he go on the keto diet? Now, my parents live in a very rural area. They have no social media contact. They have no Facebook, they have nothing, but yet the prevalence of misinformation around diet had even gotten to those people in their isolation. And we all have skin in that game. We all need to make sure that fact-based information is given. So it's a great pleasure to have our 2 speakers here this evening. And ourselves and the dietitians INDI, we were chatting about who we might get in, and we've really got some great experts to talk this evening on these topics. So I am very grateful to our speakers for that. If I might interject with one piece of advice that I found myself. Don't take advice from newspapers. Don't take advice from media, chefs, engineers, journalists, celebrities, etc. Get your information from people that actually know what they're talking about and that you can trust. And I use the analogy of a fancy car you might have, a Lamborghini or a Porsche. You wouldn't listen to somebody on the internet about how to drive that, how to service it. You would go and get it looked at by someone who knows what they're talking about. You go to the main dealer. Your body is the most important asset you will ever have in your life. So you need to respect that by getting the best of information on that. So if it's okay with you, we're going to have 2 speakers this evening. I'll introduce them now in a second, and we'll let them go through their talks, and then they've kindly agreed to answer any questions that you might have and stay on after that. So to introduce our speakers, first up we have Professor Mike Gibney. Mike's been in this game quite a while, I think, the nutrition game. He graduated from UCD in 1971 and then took a PhD research opportunity in Australia in Sydney University. In 1977 he took up a post back here in the British Isles at the University of Southampton as a lecturer in human nutrition. In '84 he came back to Ireland, working in the Department of Clinical Medicine, Trinity College, where he was appointed Professor of Clinical Nutrition before moving over to UCD to become the Director of the Institute of Food and Health. Professor Gibney is a former President of the Nutrition Society. He has served on several EU and United Nations Commissions on Nutrition and Health. He's been author or co-author on more than 350 research papers in public nutrition and molecular nutrition, as well as securing multi-million euro awards to fund all the research activities that underpin that. He's also an author of 2 popular books on aspects of nutrition. Our second speaker this evening will be Ms. Fiona Rolson, who's a registered dietitian. She graduated from the University of Ulster in 2002 with an honours degree in human nutrition and dietetics. She's a CORA registered dietitian, and that registration aspect is critically important. A CORA registered dietitian and has been specialising for more than a decade in dietetics and nutritional support for cancer patients. Her research interests are focused on malnutrition and cancer cachexia, and she's the dietitian manager in St Luke's Hospital in Dublin. Professor Gibney, I'd like to invite you up now to kick off. And we've kind of divided this into 2 areas. That's why we've got 2 specialists speaking this evening. Mike's going to talk more to the kind of general aspects around nutrition, more in the kind of pre-cancer space, what we can do in health and nutrition ourselves. And then Fiona, from her expertise with cancer, is actually going to talk about, so you've been diagnosed with cancer, what happens then and the relevance of diet there. So again, very grateful to you this evening, and thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here and to talk on this particular topic. And I hope I can be of some help. I know that I will irritate some people in what I say. There's nothing I can do about that. I can only drive what I see as the facts. I'm going to outline my talk into a number of divisions, and I'm going to start by looking at the main causes of cancer, because I want to put diet into perspective in regard to each of those. I want to look at the major challenges that exist in studying diet and cancer, and then very quickly look at a little bit of quackery, just to let you know that it's out there and that it's very serious. I want to talk about cancer and heart disease as a brief comparison, and then just talk about practical aspects of diet from an international perspective, as I would sum it up. So we're going to start talking about the causes of cancer. And let's start off with cell growth. Our cell, we have our DNA, it's in 2 strands, and these 2 strands separate, and they replicate, and then they migrate into different parts of the cell. The cell gets larger, and eventually they separate, and the cell splits, and lo and behold, we have 2 cells, and each with their own complement of DNA. Now, this is a process that goes on in every organ of the body, and when it stops, you're dead. And during this process, you get a lot of DNA damage because it's an extremely complicated molecule. And when you take it apart and put it back together again and transpose it and so forth, you're going to make mistakes. So nature has endowed us with a repair system for DNA. It quickly goes down and finds out where the problems are and it tries to fix it. Now, basically speaking, the DNA damage can be repaired, and if it's repaired, you get a viable cell and it goes on doing what it's supposed to do. On the other hand, if it's not repaired, in other words, if it's absolutely lacking in some key enzyme, it'll die, it just won't survive. But what concerns us is the fact that you might get misrepair, and as a result of that, you'll get a mutation, so that the cell will become viable, but it won't contain the same DNA it started off with. It will have a different structure of DNA. And that mutation will either lead to cell death, in most cases it does, but in some instances it'll lead to a cancer. Now, this is what I would call a Walt Disney version of cancer, because the story that would take us truly from mutation to cancer is extremely complicated and very, very elaborate. I've just summarized it here as one single step. So it's just to make life easy for all of us. So I'm going to focus on mutations and cancer first of all. And I'm going to show you data from 2 studies that have looked at the way in which different cells in the body and different organs in the body, because they mutate, they replicate at different rates, are more likely or less likely to get mutations, and more likely or less likely to be successful in repairing those mutations. So they're both from the same groups of authors. I'll introduce it in a moment, but this is a slide which I guarantee you can't read, so I've taken the liberty of helping you. And I've picked out a few of the cancers that they've linked here. And basically what you can see is a kind of linear relationship between the number of cell divisions that individual organs and tissues have to go through and the lifetime risk of cancer. So bone is a fairly slow turning over tissue. It does turn over because that's life. If you stop turning over, you're dead. So the bone turns over at a very slow rate. And the colorectal end of things, basically speaking, the cells and the molecules that make up your colon one end of the month are not the same cells and molecules that make it up the end of the month. So basically speaking, there is a correlation between the two. Now this same group this year in the prestigious journal Science, they looked at the 3 areas of genetics, the environment, and random mutations. And I'm going to look at all 3 in succession, starting with genetics. And the line that's lying there underneath this particular caricature goes from no colour to deep red. The more red that's present, the more mutation is involved in the process. The more white or pink it is, the more non-mutation, other causes are involved. So if I take genetics, for example, cancers which are driven by genetics, they slightly pink there, for example, breasts you can see are slightly pink, and some aspects of gut cancers are slightly pink as well. But there's no red, of course, because we're looking at the genetic component rather than random mutations. If I look at random mutations, of course, I now see big differences everywhere. But in particular, for example, I see lungs and breasts, for example, now being completely different. This time, random mutations are very important in breast cancer and less important in lung cancer. And on when you look at that, on the right-hand shoulder, you'll see some pink dots, which suggest that skin cancer, in that instance, has a slight random nature. But if we move now to the environment, first of all, let me refer to those dots on the shoulder. They've now gone red, and which means that the environment is playing a very significant role. The environment is playing a very significant role also in lung cancer, and to some extent in head and neck and other cancers of the digestive tract and urogenital tract. So the point I would make is that we have 3 causes of it, and the question is, how do you quantify the contribution of each one? Now, this group has tried on several occasions to do that. They've come up with this set of statistics that roughly 10% of our cancer is genetic. Around about 65% is random. In other words, 2/3 of all cancers, I don't know why this keeps moving on me, but there you go. 2/3 of all cancers are random events. You have no contribution or control over them. And about 1/4 are environmental. Now, of those environmental ones, there are a number of areas. For example, sun plays a very big role in skin cancers, obviously. Tobacco plays a very big role in lung cancer. And diet plays a role in cancers in general, but no cancer specifically, and its role is no bigger at all than sunshine or smoking, in fact. And physical activity, or rather physical inactivity, contributes significantly to cancer. And on the bottom right, I've put in peanuts contaminated with a mold called aflatoxin, which causes massive amounts of liver cancer around the world, not in developed countries, but in less developed countries where the food safety standards are more difficult to apply in the structures they have in their food chain. So these are the environmental factors that contribute to cancer, and they occupy about 25% of the full load. Now I want to move now to talk a little bit about dieting cancer and to talk about some of the major challenges, because it really is very difficult to study dieting cancer. It's first of all, it's not like heart disease where you have one heart and you have one set of coronary arteries and you have specific areas of the arteries which are involved in atherosclerosis, or mainly in atherosclerosis. But what you have in cancer is every single organ in the body. So it's completely different to a lot of things we tend to study. See, in bones, we're looking at just bones. In the brain, we're looking at just the brain, but in cancer, it's absolutely everything. So it's quite difficult to study. There are two approaches to this, animal studies and human studies. And I'm going to start off with the animal studies because much in all as I hate animal studies because I'm a human biologist by trade, I tend to switch off when I see the word mouse or rat at the title of a paper. Nonetheless, I have to accept that in the case of cancer, you have no choice but to study them using animals. And in the case of animals, the model that is quite often used, most often used, is that you take a known carcinogen, and there are plenty of these around the place, but you take a known carcinogen and you pick maximum tolerated dose, the most you can get into the animal. You then feed them over a period of time, and you either expose half of them to your test drug, assuming you're testing a drug, and half of them to a placebo, and at the end of it, you look for the scale and severity of the tumours. And that's the model that would be used in drug development and in therapeutic discovery. In terms of nutrition, a lot of studies have been carried out looking at the same model in which you have a test diet, be it a low-fat diet, a high-fat diet, a high-vitamin diet, or whatever it might be diet, and you get the same results. You get a measure of the effectiveness or otherwise of the diet on the cancer that you're studying. The problem I have is that this is an extremely useful model for testing of drugs, but it's a very poor model for the testing of diets, which apply to man. Very, very poor. And I can think of very few examples where people have successfully moved from animal studies into human studies in terms of human nutrition. Usually it's been direct studies with humans that have been most helpful. So that's what I want to turn to now. The most widely used method of studying diet in cancer is quite complicated because it's a prospective study which will last about 20 or 30 years. Well, you could get away with 10 or 15, but cancer takes a long time to develop. So you start off when you recruit on the top left-hand side at baseline a group of people that are healthy. In other words, you don't allow anybody that has a disease or condition enter your sample. And all clinical decisions are based not on the view of the patient or of their GP, but on hard data of medical records. So they're excluded if they're not healthy. And you gather together dietary data and blood data and DNA data, or whatever data you want. As much money as you have, you can start spending it there. And then you follow them. And you can sample them every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on how much money you have. And after a period of time, you simply say, hands up all the people who got, say, lung cancer. And of course, they become your cases. Now, you don't simply accept the word of the individual that they have lung cancer. You will look for definitive diagnostic evidence from the medical system that, in fact, it is a cancer and it is a lung cancer, and not just in the opinion of the person or even their local doctor. You then select a group of controls to match these, so they're matched for age, for sex, and so forth. And you ask yourself, among the cases, how did they differ from controls at the start of this study and as they progressed through it? Did they start off with bad diets that got progressively worse, and did that contribute to it? Did they have low calcium intakes? Did they have high fiber intakes? You can study whatever you like. And basically speaking, this is the most widely used method for study of dieting cancer in humans. And I'll refer to that in a moment when I come to look at some actual evidence. However, they are prospective studies. The real studies, that the ones that I particularly like, are human intervention studies. And basically speaking, this requires you to recruit volunteers into a study. They may be healthy volunteers, or they may be people suffering from cancer. And you have a test diet, and you intend to follow these people for a period of time. So if I think of the women's health study in the United States, they looked at a low-fat, high-fiber diet over 5 to 7 years in women to see its impact on breast cancer and colorectal cancer and indeed cardiovascular disease as well. And there have been other studies in which people have interfered or managed the diets of subjects over a long period of time to see, does it cause the disease? The difference between the two is the first one, which is the most widely used of all, is associative. It only tells you there is an association between this dietary pattern and this cancer. It does not tell you that one caused the other. There's simply no logic there. You have to carry out the intervention study to prove it otherwise. So the only way we can be certain is with human intervention studies. Now, I fully respect that it is difficult very often to conduct intervention studies, and that we have to live with all of the data we have, animal data, intervention or prospective studies and intervention studies. For example, if you want to do an intervention study on a cancer that's very rare, you require an enormous amount of people recruited baseline. And if it's very rare, it'll probably take a long time to appear, and you'll be an awful long time doing it. And who's going to pay for that? It's a high-risk investment. So it's very hard to find funds for that sort of thing. So we have to use all of the data that we have, but the data we have is dominated by the association studies. Now I want to look at just one example of someone who reviewed the literature linking foods and cancer. And the person that did this is really one of the best epidemiologists in the United States, John Ioannidis. He's a Greek chap based at Stanford. Now what they did was, they went along to Fannie Farmer's Boston Cooked School Book, or cookery book, and they randomly selected recipes. And from the recipes, they randomly selected ingredients. And having randomly selected the ingredients in as random a way you can possible, they then went to the literature and said, let's ask ourselves, what does the literature tell us about each of these ingredients? Now bear in mind, the ingredients will be eggs, flour, salt, bacon, olive oil, so forth. And lots of spices and so forth. And what they find is, in terms of the different cancers of the different organs, absolutely no evidence to suggest a strong effect. If it was a strong effect, they would all lie to the left or right of one side, either causing on the right-hand side or protecting on the left-hand side. And they're simply splattered right across the whole lot. So there's no strong evidence for each of these common causes, common cancers, that randomly selected ingredients in a recipe book are in any way associated. Notwithstanding the fact that there's tons and tons and tons of studies out there, all of which end up in the media and on television and sensationalized and so forth. This diet causes this diet protects that. Put it all together and you get a completely different picture. Now the other thing they did then was to do it the other way around, because going across there you have every dot represents a different food. In this case you have a food going down the right hand side and every dot represents a different type of cancer. Now again you find more or less the same thing, and there are so many foods down here I wasn't able to highlight them for you. So what I've done is I've picked out 4 that actually do move either side completely of the line. So if you take the bottom one, bacon, it's all positive, and the same is true of pork and salt. And in terms of negative, it's olive oil. So you can find foods that lie on one side of it and you lie on the other side. And you might draw the conclusion now, well, these are foods we should avoid and these are foods we should take in. But remember, this guy, John Hernandez, is a really good statistician. Here's his conclusion. The large majority of these studies were interpreted by their authors as offering evidence for increased or decreased risk of cancer. The vast majority of these claims were based on weak statistical evidence. So, yes, it's true that you will read in the paper that Fred Bloggs at the University of Goodwill produced a study to show that cinnamon protects against cancer. Add all the cinnamon studies together and you find it's not the case. The statistics just don't add up. Now, I want to continue a little bit with the food area and talk about superfoods. These are very, very popular. We're now moving away from the hard science and getting into the social media side of things. And superfoods are very popular. The journalists love to talk about them. Here's various types of superfoods. I can never get over the fact that kale is the latest superfood. I love it. This is what the World Cancer Research Fund says about superfoods. Many of us would like to believe that eating a single type of vegetable or fruit will improve our health. The truth is that no single food is going to make up for an unhealthy diet and lifestyle. And that's what superfoods are often looked upon. All I have to do is eat almonds and I'll be fine. That's just not going to work, I'm afraid. Now, from superfoods, you go to phytochemicals, because people say to themselves, well, you know what, there's some evidence out there that citrus fruit protects against cancer. Let's just pretend it does. What's the active ingredient? Let's take it out of the citrus fruit, let's make a tablet of it. We won't bother having to eat fruits, we'll just take the tablet. And that's the philosophy of phytochemicals. Now, the problem here is, as one review has pointed out, the obvious weakness is that most of these studies are carried out in test tubes. They're not even carried out with rats in many instances, they're carried out in cell culture studies. And that doesn't tell us anything about how much is transported across an animal's gut, let alone a human gut. And it goes on to point out that of the small proportion that would be transported across the gut, a huge amount gets transposed and metabolized before it hits any organ. So the liver is very, very good at getting rid of things that are not naturally present in the body. So it gets rid of these things, and they're readily excreted. So phytochemicals, I can see no future for them, despite the fact that people hold out great hopes for them, particularly from ancient remedies from the East. Detoxification is very popular. Apparently, Google have a program that allows you to search for the time of year that particular words are used on Google. January is detoxification. So it's a very popular time. I suspect also Monday will be a more popular day for this than any others. But there is, and there's plenty of books out there about it, but basically speaking, the body has a way of, through its own genetic code, of knowing itself, and it regulates this very well. So the liver will get rid of anything that's not supposed to be there, and it will be helped by the gut to some extent. It will be particularly helped by the immune system, and I think I've got the kidney there as well. So there's a huge array of tissues in our human body which say we're going to protect our patch, and we're going to recognize what should be here and what shouldn't be here. We're going to get rid of it. So when you take a drug, it doesn't stay there forever. It goes very quickly out of your body, and these are the organs that get rid of it. They simply transform it into a way that you can peel it out. So detoxifying is popular but pretty useless. Not really one for cancer. But the problem is that I could go on all night. There are endless numbers of popular books on diet and cancer, offering all sorts of preventions and cures. one I picked out, it's not because it's particularly good, it's just the price. Did you pay 200 and something quid for that? For a book that's going to, I mean, it's just unbelievable that these things are for sale. But there you go, it's 200 quid. I wish I could do that. Like a bit of money. The thing I hate most, of course, is the Daily Mail and the Daily Express, who feed on these books and feed on these studies that come out. And I also blame universities for their publicity departments. Fred Bloggs does a study and he finds cinnamon reduces tumours in rats, and it's put out by the media, put out by the communications office and taken up by the media. So it's not really the media's fault, it's often the university's fault. This is the book I recommend, and it's strange that I had a good old friend in the audience that had recently encountered this particular condition of cancer, and she took out of her handbag this book. This is the American Cancer Society's complete guide to nutrition for cancer survivors. It deals with prevention, it deals with treatment, it deals with complications, and it deals with survival. It covers absolutely everything, as fairly as you can. And I think you have to respect the American Cancer Society as being pretty good independent authority. So if you know anyone who wants to buy a book, go on Amazon, find that. It costs you about 25 US dollars, but it's well worth every penny. Just to give you an example, they looked at a lot of things, and I decided to throw in a few organic foods. Basically, they say there's no evidence, it may not change health. I'm moving down to the second part. But what's very important is they're decent about it. They say, look, if consuming most organic foods provides you with a greater peace of mind, go ahead and do it. And they're perfectly right. And it may not do you any good, but if it makes you feel better, do it. So they also then go on to talk about pesticides to point out there's very little risk to human health. And there's no evidence that it increases the risk for cancer or recurrence. And it does this for all sorts of different diets, and particularly for quack diets. And I'm going to pick out just one example of quackery. And that was this the piece that some of you may have seen on the BBC of this young officer in the British Army, served in Afghanistan, developed breast cancer, was treated, returned to active service, and then was discovered to have pretty well intractable cancer everywhere, and was given months to live. And being the fighting type that this lady was, she wouldn't take that for an answer, and that happens to many people who have cancer. And she went and visited this gentleman, Robert Young. He is the author of a lot of books on the alkaline diet, and he's now in jail, I'm happy to tell you. He treated her like he treats all people with infusions of baking soda. So you lie in your bed, you're hooked up to a line, and in goes baking soda. So it's an alkali. It's going to make your blood alkaline, and it's going to cure you of cancer. Of course, this young officer was flown home to England to die in the company of her family in peace, and he got 70,000 sterling from her, by the way. Cancer versus heart disease. I put this in for the simple reason that there is, especially among women, a belief that breast cancer is the big problem, and heart disease is only for men. That's not the case, I'm afraid. This is coronary heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, and breast cancer. Rates per 1,000, and I think this slide goes up as far as the mid-60s. And you see there's no difference whatsoever between the four diseases. But once you go past that, coronary heart disease begins to take a lead. And once you go further on, it dramatically rises. So although there is a tendency to regard breast cancer as the killer for women, that is not the case. So the dietary advice that you have for heart disease is exactly the same dietary advice you have for management of cancer, or prevention of cancer. So the practical aspects are as follows. There's a long, long list of things here which are nonsense. And unfortunately, boarding all healthy eating guidelines at the bottom is the sensible and only approach. And that basically is, and this is my reading of all of the stuff I find, try to have a healthy weight. And I put the word try because I know how difficult it is for many people to do it, and we have to have great sympathy for them. Be physically active no matter what your weight. So even if you are overweight, be physically active. Eat plenty of fruit and vegetables, whole grains, of course. Limit your intake of cured high salt meats. Seriously moderate your alcohol intake. I've got lady friends who have suffered from breast cancer and are on all sorts of wacky diets. I have one lady who is a good friend of mine, and she gets her advice from her tango dance teacher, not me. But she enjoys serious quantities of alcohol and is desperately worried about protein. Avoiding high-fat diets, especially ones high in saturated. It's exactly the same things you see for heart disease and for cancer. They all boil down to just basically trying to live a sensible and healthy lifestyle and not overdo it. So with that, I'll finish. Thank you very much.
Mike, for an amazing tour de force, and I suppose maybe the take-home message is it's actually simpler than we think, than we're led to believe in media. So, as I said at the outset, what we wanted to do was try and bring us through the whole kind of journey. So Mike's given us, I guess, a great molecular introduction and the things that we can do and impact our risk of developing cancer, and that's stacking the odds in our favour. But what if we do get cancer? And for that, I'd like to invite Fiona Rolson up to give your presentation. Thank you very much, Fiona.
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming out this evening, and thank you to the Irish Cancer Society for inviting me to speak. So I'm going to be talking this evening about nutrition and the cancer journey, so the practical side of that. So what I'm going to cover is why is diet important during cancer treatment, how to cope with unplanned weight loss, nutrition after cancer treatment, and then just some advice on how to access dietetic services and accurate, reliable nutrition information. So why is it important? So malnutrition is a common but often under-recognized problem in cancer. Rates can vary depending on the tumour type, and rates of 8 to 84% have been reported. And unintentional weight loss is often associated with a loss of muscle mass and a loss of muscle strength. So a lot of the patients that I would see don't always look typically malnourished. A lot of patients may actually be overweight or obese. That doesn't mean that they're not actually losing their muscle mass. Cancer cachexia then is a complex syndrome that's characterized by progressive unintentional weight loss, a loss of muscle and strength, increased production of inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, and often where standard nutritional support is unable to fully reverse it. So it's easier to prevent development or progression of cancer cachexia than it is to reverse it. So therefore early intervention is key. However, this doesn't always happen, maybe due to late referrals to dietetic services, or often where there might be a lack of dietetic resources available. So again, the incidence of cancer cachexia varies according to tumour type, and cancers of the digestive tract tend to have the highest incidence. So malnutrition in cancer can be caused by many different factors, and it can be causes from the tumour itself, such as pain, dysphagia, obstruction. It can be caused by side effects of treatment, things like dry mouth, taste changes, and altered bowel habit, like constipation or diarrhea, nausea or vomiting. Or it could be caused by psychological problems or fatigue, and all of these can then contribute to poor appetite and weight loss. So this is just a study that I was involved in as part of a malnutrition cancer research group recently, and we're hoping to publish it this year. So it's an Irish study, and we looked at 200 patients at their first dietetic consult, and we looked at their nutritional status, and we found that 2/3 had more than 5% weight loss at their first appointment with the dietitian, and a third of those had greater than 10% weight loss. The weight loss was associated with a poor appetite, nausea, and early satiety or feeling of fullness, and it was felt that nearly half of the patients seen could have done with being referred earlier. And when it came to the nutrition impact symptoms, The most common ones were reduced appetite, nausea, early satiety, altered bowel habit, but they really did vary, and it was found that 70% actually had more than 2 nutrition impact symptoms. So the consequences of malnutrition in cancer are reduced quality of life, increased risk of infection, increased treatment toxicities, reduced tumour response to treatment, and overall reduced survival. So what does a dietitian look at when they're assessing an oncology patient? So we look at many different factors. We look at things like anthropometry, so we take a weight history, and look at their body mass index. We also look at muscle mass and muscle strength. We look at their biochemistry, so blood results, so things like C-reactive protein to look for inflammation. We look at vitamin and mineral blood results. Then in clinical details, we ask them about their nutrition impact symptoms, so what side effects of treatment they're experiencing, what medications they're on. And then we look at their dietary information, so what's their appetite like, what's their food intake like, and we compare this to disease and age-specific requirements. And then we'll also talk to them about what questions they might have, what beliefs they might have, what they've read in the media about diet and cancer, what supplements they're taking or thinking of taking. So it's a really individualised assessment. There's no one-size-fits-all, and even the advice that I'm going to be giving this evening won't be applicable to every single cancer patient. It really is individual. So I think it's important to remember that the goal of nutrition in cancer isn't to treat the cancer itself, but it's actually to maintain the person to withstand their cancer treatments. And this is done in 2 ways. So by maintaining body mass, especially muscle, during treatment, and helping to manage symptoms or side effects of treatment. Nutritional guidelines are based on the best evidence available, and this can come from things like peer-reviewed scientific journals, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, or expert consensus recommendations. An example of these are the ESPEN guidelines on nutrition in cancer patients, which were published last year. And what do they recommend? They recommend high energy to meet increased energy needs, protein to minimize muscle loss, nutrition interventions to increase oral intake in cancer patients who are malnourished or at risk of malnutrition, and this can include dietary advice, treatment of side effects, and nutritional supplements which may be available on prescription. They don't recommend diets that restrict energy intake in patients who have malnutrition or at risk of malnutrition. And they do say there are some evidence for fish oils to reduce inflammation, but caution is needed as there is potential for some interaction with certain chemotherapy. So what does a high protein, high energy diet look like? So it looks like small, frequent meals, regular snacks, nourishing fluids such as milky drinks, smoothies, creamy soups, nutritional supplement drinks, high energy dense foods, so avoiding low fat options, adding extra butter, cream, cheese to foods, and having a protein source at each meal or snack. So although these recommendations may seem to be the opposite of healthy eating, the priority is to maintain weight and avoid weight loss, and that outweighs the benefit for low-fat diets in the short term. So these are just some examples of some quick meals and snack ideas that didn't come out well in this slide there, but just some of the examples that we would give to patients. So I'm just going to go through the next few slides and look at some of the side effects of treatment that patients experience and just give you some tips for managing each of these. So swallowing difficulties can be caused by the tumour itself or as a result of treatment to the head, neck or esophagus area. We recommend if you have difficulty swallowing food or notice that you're coughing after eating or drinking, let your oncology team know, and they can arrange a speech and language therapy review and they can assess your swallow. They may then recommend an altered texture diet or altered fluids. So you may need to then chop, mince, smash or liquidize your foods and may need to add extra butter, milk or sauces to moisten foods or add extra calories and protein. So sore mouth or throat can be caused by treatments to the head and neck area or also as a side effect of chemotherapy. It's important to keep your mouth fresh and clean and choosing softer foods and avoiding rough textures. Again, chop, mince, smash or liquidize foods, adding extra butter or sauces, drinking plenty of nourishing fluids, and taking care of foods that are very hot or acidic or spicy. A dry mouth can be a side effect of medications or there's radiotherapy to the head and neck area. There are numerous artificial saliva preparations available that can help with this, and we advise to drink often, regular sips throughout the day with meals. Choosing soft, moist foods, avoiding anything very dry or flaky, and ice cubes and ice pops can help as well. So nausea and vomiting can be a common side effect of chemotherapy or radiotherapy to the stomach area. We advise to eat little and often, so avoiding very large meals, but also avoiding an empty stomach, which can also make you feel queasy. Dry, bland foods can help, such as crackers, toast, plain biscuits. Ginger is often said to help, so things like ginger biscuits or ginger tea. Avoiding foods that have a very strong smell can also help, and getting a bit of fresh air before meals just to get rid of any strange smells that you might have in your system. We advise not to lie down too soon after eating, as this can increase nausea, and watch out for constipation, as that can also make it worse. If you can't keep food down, we advise to drink plenty of fluids and to take anti-sickness tablets either before meals or prescribed by your doctor. So taste changes is a common side effect as well. It can be caused from medications, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy to the mouth area. There can be many different types of taste changes. Some people say they get a metallic taste, others say everything tastes very sweet or very salty, or a lot of people find they just have no taste and everything just tastes like cardboard. So if this happens, we advise to keep trying foods, trying new foods and keep retrying them, because you might find something that you eat this week tastes rotten, but in a couple of weeks' time you've got the better taste for that again. Keeping your mouth fresh and clean is important. And then for metallic taste, often colder foods can be easier, or foods at room temperature. If you're sensitive to the taste of the cutlery that you're using, plastic cutlery can help for the short term. And marinating meats in soy sauce or lemon juice can have sharp flavours. If you have no taste or everything tastes bland, using strong flavourings or seasonings can help, or sour foods like lemon juice or sweet and sour sauce. And a lot of patients would say that they find subbing on pineapple chunks before meals can really help to take away bad taste that they have. So constipation can be a side effect of treatment as well. It can also be a side effect of strong painkillers or some anti-nausea tablets. If you have constipation, it's important to try and have regular meals, including high fibre foods in your diet, so whole grain cereals and breads, raw fruit and vegetables, pulses and nuts, and aiming for plenty of fluids, so 8 to 10 cups of fluid every day. And some exercise can also help. And the opposite then, having diarrhea, that can be caused by different cancer treatments or sometimes from the tumour itself. We recommend if you have diarrhea to try and eat little and often. Avoiding dehydration is important, so again aiming for 8 to 10 cups of fluid a day. Avoiding foods that are very greasy or very spicy, avoiding alcohol, or foods that cause wind as well, so fizzy drinks, sometimes chewing gum, beans, peas, pulses. And sometimes reducing fibre can help as well, so we're going for more white breads, low fibre cereals, peeling and cooking your vegetables and peeling fruit. And then you may need antidiarrheal medications as well. So if you experience fatigue as a side effect of your cancer treatment, it is important to accept the help that your friends and family are offering, because you're not going to feel like shopping or cooking. If you do feel like cooking, make the most of the good days and make extra portions and freeze them. Stock up on foods like tinned soups, beans, yogurts, eggs, things that can be made quite quickly and quite easily. Take light exercise as able, and avoid caffeine or alcohol before bedtime to make sure you get a really restful sleep. Just to mention exercise, keeping active can have a very positive effect on your health and well-being, and also help to reduce the side effects of cancer treatments. Exercise builds and maintains muscle, helps with strength, flexibility and mobility. But if you are undertaking any new exercise, check with your doctor first. And if you have access to a physiotherapist, they can devise a tailored exercise plan that suits your needs. Just before I move on to nutrition after cancer treatment, I just want to take you through this short case study which demonstrates some of the issues discussed. So this is William, whose name has been changed for this presentation. He's a 63-year-old man who lives with his wife and his son. He has had no previous medical history. He's a non-smoker, he doesn't drink. He presented to his GP with stomach pains and yellowing skin colour, and after numerous tests was diagnosed with a locally advanced pancreatic cancer. His treatment plan was chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and his nutrition impact symptoms were pale and oily diarrhoea known as steatorrhea and a decreased appetite. So unfortunately, the local hospital where William was diagnosed didn't have funding for dietetic service to oncology, so he wasn't seen by a dietitian until he attended a specialist centre. At that time, he had gone from his usual weight of 80 kilograms to 52 kilograms, and although his body mass index was still within the normal range, he had lost 35% of his body weight, so over a third of his actual body weight. His blood results showed that he had a low vitamin A and vitamin D. His dietary intake, he was managing things like toast, eggs, cereal, vegetables, rice, yogurts, but his appetite was poor, and it was estimated that he was meeting about 60% of his energy and protein requirements. So the nutrition plan for William was a high protein, high calorie diet. He was starting on oral nutritional supplements to help meet his requirements. He was advised on managing diarrhoea, and he was starting on pancreatic enzymes to help him absorb the fat that he was eating and reduce the pale and oily stools that he was experiencing. And he was given advice on how to take those with meals and snacks. And he was commenced on a vitamin supplement for vitamin A and D. His symptoms improved and he tolerated his treatment well overall. And at a 6-week follow-up appointment, he had gained 7 kilograms in weight and was awaiting plans for further surgery. I'm just going to move on now to nutrition after cancer treatment. So the World Cancer Research Fund published their Food, Nutrition, Physical Activity and Prevention of Cancer guidelines in 2007, and it's expected that there will be a new version of this launched this year. So these were endorsed by the World Health Organization. They were developed by an international expert group of about 200 experts. They did a systematic review of 500,000 studies, and they based the report on the highest quality, most relevant studies, which were around 7,000. And they came up with 8 key recommendations in relation to physical activity and diet. But it's also a continuous update project. They're constantly setting research questions, funding research, and looking at what new research is coming out. So these are the 8 recommendations. And what they do say is that for people who have completed their cancer treatment, unless otherwise advised by their oncology team, that these guidelines or these recommendations are applicable to them as well. So I'll just go through each of these now in turn. So the first one is to be as lean as possible or be a healthy weight. So what does that look like? So you're aiming to have a body mass index of between 18.5 and 24.9. And we're looking at waist circumference. For men, the recommendation is less than 37 inches, and for women, less than 32 inches. They recommend to be physically active, so moderate activities such as brisk walking for at least 30 minutes every day. And as fitness improves, to aim for 60 minutes of moderate activity a day or 30 minutes of more vigorous activity. They recommend limiting sedentary habits such as watching TV. The third recommendation is to limit consumption of energy-dense foods and avoid sugary drinks which contribute to obesity. So what is an energy-dense food? So that's food that has an energy content of more than 225 to 275 calories per 100 grams. And that includes things like biscuits, cakes, sweets and crisps. Sugary drinks are those that have added sugars, so to look out on the food labels for different various names for sugar, sucrose, glucose, fructose, dextrose, honey, all the various terms. They recommend to eat mostly foods of plant origin. So there's two types here, so fruit and vegetables and whole grains. So fruit and vegetables, you'll be aiming for at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables every day, and trying to eat a variety as well, so different variety of colours, eating a rainbow. Whole grains are things like whole grain cereals, such as porridge, unsweetened muesli, whole grain breads, brown rice or pasta. So just be careful if you are trying to lose weight or trying to avoid weight gain, just watch the portion sizes of the carbohydrate foods. And as a quick guide, a portion size of rice or pasta is about the size of a tennis ball. So the next recommendation is to limit intake of red meat and avoid processed meats. So red meat is beef, pork, lamb and goat. They recommend having less than 500 grams or 18 ounces of cooked red meat a week, and that can be divided up into as many different portions as you would like. Processed meats are meats that have been smoked, cured, or had salt or other chemical preservatives added. And that's things like ham, bacon, some sausages, chorizo, salami, pepperoni, and frankfurters. They recommend avoiding or limiting alcoholic drinks. There's no kind of safe alcohol threshold given in the guidelines, but they do say if you're going to drink alcohol, for men, stick to no more than 2 standard drinks a day, and for women, no more than 1 standard drink a day. And a standard drink is the equivalent of half a pint of stout, lager or cider, a small glass of wine, or a pub measure of spirits. The next one is limiting consumption of salt. So you can do this by trying to avoid adding salt to your food, limiting processed foods such as ready meals or snack foods, trying to use alternative flavourings in cooking such as garlic, lemon, herbs and spices, and looking for no added salt options when you're choosing breakfast cereals, stock foods and tinned foods. And the last one is aiming to meet nutritional needs through diet alone. So the World Cancer Research Fund don't recommend dietary supplements for cancer prevention, although they do recognise that certain supplements may need to be prescribed by a doctor for a period of time if required. And they recommend avoiding high doses, so a maximum of 100% of the recommended daily allowance, so just keep an eye for that on food labels. So I'm just going to finish by talking about accessing dietetic services. So if you have been diagnosed with cancer or you know someone who has, and you want to arrange to see a dietitian, so there's a few ways that you can do this. So first of all, dietitians may be hopefully available in your hospital, so you can ask your doctor or your clinical nurse specialist about this. In the community, dietitians may work at the local health centres or GP surgeries, so you can ask your GP or practice nurse for a referral. Or if you want to see a dietitian privately, there are a number of freelance dietitians working around the country, and you can get their details from either the INDI website or the Self-Employed Dietitians of Ireland website. So when it comes to looking for information on nutrition and cancer, as Professor Gibney mentioned, when you go online and put nutrition and cancer into a search engine like Google or Bing, you get a huge amount of results. And unfortunately, a lot of these results aren't reliable information. So I'd just like to share some websites that I recommend or that I think are useful. So for cancer prevention or secondary prevention, the World Cancer Research Fund website is a good one for that. If you're looking for healthy eating information or recipes, the Safe Food website is really good for those. Breakthrough Cancer Research in conjunction with University College Cork have developed a couple of really good recipe books for high protein, high calorie recipes and swallowing difficulties, and they're available free and you can order them through their website. If you're looking for information on herbal products or alternative products, vitamin and mineral supplements, I highly recommend the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Centre in New York's website. They have a really good section on about herbs and botanicals. And then you'll also find information on diet and cancer on the Irish Cancer Society website and Macmillan UK. So in summary, good nutrition can help you cope with and recover from your cancer treatment. If you experience unplanned weight loss, the advice is a high protein, high energy diet. Small frequent meals are highlighting any symptoms to your oncology team. After treatment, the advice is healthy eating unless otherwise advised. And you should always get your nutrition advice from reliable sources. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so as mentioned earlier, we are or have been broadcasting on Facebook Live. We're going to finish that up now, and I would just like to mention, we know whenever we bring something up and speak about cancer, that it can bring up a lot of questions and complexity for people. So just on the slide here that Robert might focus on, we have various information resources. So a free phone nurse line, 1-800-200-700, and the hours are up there. We also have a social media community around that, so in terms of email and other ways of interacting with the qualified staff there. And any one of our 13 daffodil centres around the country, the various hospitals where you'll see people treated by cancer. Fiona mentioned as well the INDI website, and INDI represents the profession of dietitians and the self-employed dietitians of Ireland for private dietitian consults if you're having difficulty in the public system. So we're going to finish up there on the Facebook. Thanks very much to everybody for listening in or looking in on Facebook. Hope you found this informative. And our speakers have very kindly agreed to address questions. You know, we can't do this for sound reasons on Facebook, but certainly if we do get queries, we'll do our best in the coming days and weeks to try and address those. So thanks very much. Maybe our speakers might join me up here.